Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Dark Season defense matches. Thracer's overall success last week gave me the push I needed to try experimenting with my dark defense. It probably could have happened in a better week, since switching to a single dancer and Mila's bonus week is sort of asking for trouble. On the other hand, Edelgard is an excellent dancer to meet that challenge. I took advantage of the free manual we got last month from the codes to help boost him up to +6. Combined with Hell for the extra defense bonus and the Wagasa for chill defense, it gives him enough defense to beat almost any Mila's defense check. I'm holding off on the last parts of this investment, trait fruits, the fortress defense res skill, and the last few marches, until I see if he turns up in the Hall of Forms. The other noticeable change to the defense this week is Rhajat. I've been puzzling over a good answer to save skills and brave Hectors for a while, and I think Rhajat is a decent flexible solution, even at low marches. Her Refine is extremely powerful, effectively turning her into a ranged Kempf, and it also has a significant bonus of activating even if she doesn't survive the combat, as long as she gets to attack. I gave her my Aspel. I only had one, but I wasn't really using him, for Fury and no follow-up, which should give her a very good fight against some other problematic units like Micaiah and Brave Hector, without sacrificing too much in any other matchups. I'm interested in seeing how she performs over the next few weeks, and if the results are positive, she could actually end up on my merge project list. I didn't update any of the other builds too much. Bremen was using Sturdy Blow for some of the matches, but the other two are the same. I did make some minor updates through the week as the defense results came in. The first one was just to give Edelgard a fortress defense seal, which lets him beat basically any Mila on the defense check before I get him fully merged. There's some of the highly invested Milas can actually isolate him without it in their bonus week. The second update was to give Rhajat a couple of distant guard skills. Azura was actually carrying these before, and one of the matches about halfway through the week reminded me why I had those on Azura. The last update was just because of a bit of an oops moment, where I actually ended up giving Edelgard Sturdy Blow instead of keeping the Fortress Defense Seal. So once I realized that, I gave it back to him for the last few matches. I was expecting some growing pains going into the week, but overall the results were really positive. The only clean losses required very minor tweaks to patch, which is a really promising sign. So let's get to the first match. This was an interesting way to start the week. It's basically a pure hit-and-run strategy with Ophelia as their primary unit. The double peonies and Renee on top of that give them a lot of ability to just continue hitting and then escape out of range after they're done. The pre-charged AoE special does a lot for helping her just to crack open any really tough targets. But without the Bolt Tower, they end up having to take a lot of time to think about how they approach this. Part of it, too, is that they do realize that they need to be able to hit Felix with Ophelia's Blazing Special before he actually moves in, because if they just attack Hell here, Ophelia won't actually hit Felix at all, which is why they're clearing out this corner for Ophelia. I think they realized here, though, that Ophelia is going to need a little bit more help to actually finish Felix off. Once she has both peonies supporting her, she actually has enough damage to do it. Interestingly, after I gave the distant guard skills to Rhajat, this wouldn't have even worked. And, as is, they're kind of stuck. And without a way to get their units back out of range, Elliot finds one knockout. And then Bramament gets danced, and can warp forward and pick off Renea.
I will crush you.
I wanted to be together.
And losing 2 units there is enough for them to surrender. It would have been pretty tricky for them to actually finish too, just because the guard effect from Felix actually stopped Ophelia from recharging her special. This one was a little unfortunate. I was hoping to avoid seeing any maxed out Milas this week, but ended up running into one on the very second match. With this much defense, Mila is able to isolate Eldigan without getting that extra fortress defense seal, which is why I again ended up giving it to him after this match was over. Their attack plan is mostly using this Micaiah, with Dagger as some backup. They also did a very clever bit of early maneuvering to pick this catapult off before it can actually break their bolt tower. If this isn't something I've seen much of, I think this is only the second time actually, but if I see it too much, I'll probably end up moving some structures to make sure that it doesn't happen. The bolt tower here is mostly just to make sure that Micaiah can finish off Hell after she gets through Felix. This is another match that has me hoping we end up getting this Fallen Shield seal at some point. Although, it would make my own offenses a lot harder too, so... And then Peony lets them get Micaiah back out, and Erkin pulls her to safety. From here, since Eldigan is isolated, none of our units can actually make it to the front line. If he hadn't been isolated, Bramament would have been able to secure a knockout. So, as unfortunate as it was to see this early in the week, it was an easy enough problem to fix, so I'm not too worried about it.
Be safe.
Together forever.
In between Dagger and Micaiah, they can clean things up pretty easily on this turn, especially with 2 dancers to help. And then they just let Dagger enemy phase Eldigan. Her bonus week is going to be very interesting. She's already a very solid combat unit. It's always nice to bounce back from a failure with a success. This team brought a couple of very powerful tanks. Legendary Corin, when she's in season, is extremely solid. Between negating Fang and Mystic Boost, she can tank her way through a lot of stuff. And Duo Alphonse, well, he's aged very well, honestly. He's been a very, very solid Aether Raids unit ever since he was released. And Air Peony and Mila. This Mila is not actually going to get to isolate our Eldigan, because after that last match I updated his build. And he is now very far out of range of being isolated. I think they ended up misclicking here. I'm pretty sure they meant to break the panic manor here. Unfortunately, they didn't. And with his buffs panicked, Alphonse is not really going to be able to handle Bramamond.
Our warmest wishes.
I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping that Rhajat would move in here.
I won't lose.
But, oh well.
So much fun.
It's not necessarily a bad thing if she's not going forward and Bramamond's getting a knockout anyway. They get danced forward for a second knockout on Peony.
Time to sleep.
They use Corin to finish Bramamond off here. But they're in a pretty rough situation at this point. And pulling Mila out of range of Corin isn't really helping either. Corin's negating Fang does help a lot, but unfortunately she can't recharge it for Felix's second hit,
Here, take this.
thanks to the guard effect,
That future.
and Bonfire is enough for him to finish her off. We don't get in range of the rest of their team, but losing Corin at that point is enough for them to surrender. This match was a lot of fun to see. For one very distinct reason. They brought along a maxed out Oliver. And if you've been watching my other videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Oliver in Aether raids myself. Using a solo skill is... I personally prefer the stance because the guard effect is extremely useful, but a solo skill gives him a much better player phase to work with. And they supported him with Raisin, of course, and brought along a Peony, a Dogger, an Air with Tamari, and a Mila. I don't quite know why they're using Sabotage Attack when they already have Tamari. The extra 2 is useful, but it's not too helpful. They actually have a pretty clever initiation here. Smiting Dogger onto the heavy trap,
Accept your death.
and then using Gale Force to help her retreat back out. Lets them get the defense moving without putting anybody in any situations that are too risky. And the gravity effect does slow our team down enough that nobody actually gets to catch up and get in range. This is another moment where, looking back, I'm glad I added the distant guard skills to Rhajat, because it would have stopped this from actually working as well. But as is, they do get to pick Felix off with Oliver, and then they set up their supports behind him. Unfortunately, at this point, he does get lunged, and while Pulse Smoke shuts down Gale Force very well, it doesn't stop him from getting panicked and pulled further away from his supports. And when Bramamond attacks, the Glimmer
Make my stand here.
is enough for them to finish Oliver off.
Beauty is fleeting.
And then they get danced forward to pick Mila off as well. A little unfortunate, again, that Rhajat didn't get a chance to do her thing. But I can't really blame her when the rest of the team is doing so well. This one felt really odd to see, just because it's been a very long time since I've seen a Lynja actually be the success factor in one of my defense replays. And she's only +1. I brought along the usual support squad. Mila with even pulse tie is a very fun way to take advantage of her bonus week stats. Help shut down any pulse teams. They did also get pretty lucky with this, and we didn't pick their bolt tower off. But at the same time, this was the match that reminded me why I gave Azura double distant guard in the first place. They used Disarm Trap to pick off the healing tower here, mostly because with the Bright Shrine still intact, Lyn can't actually finish Felix off this turn. So they take another turn, to break the structures and move Lyn back into position. And without the debuffs, she has just enough power to finish Felix off. And once Felix is down, the rest of the team is not going to be long for this match.
Go for it!
They do have air finish off Hollywood. Lyn doesn't quite have enough actions to pick off him and Bramamond. But Eldigan isn't really much of a threat to Lyn. She has enough bulk to survive one hit from him pretty easily. And, well, when he's the only one left on the field, that's not much of a problem. It was a pretty clean win from them overall. But again, this isn't something I'm too worried about, since it's pretty easy to just give Distant Guard a shot, and make this much less of a successful option. This one was very satisfying to see after the last match. They didn't just bring a duo Lyn along, they also brought a Winter Altina and a duo Peony, along with the normal Peony, a Mila, and a Dogger. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you probably have a good idea of where this is going. They end up plonking Altina in range, and thinking she'll do a good job of handling everything. Unfortunately for her,
Here, take this.
Felix has been built with her in mind, and he dismantles her without any problems at all. And when Hollywood moves forward, he gets to jump forward and pick Lyn off as well. And with their two major units out of the way, they just concede the match. This was another interesting one to see. I was wondering if I was going to see any heavily invested masked Marths in her bonus week, and this one is very impressive. The only skill I'm not sure about in this build is the Fury. I think she'd be much better off with the stance or solo. Fury's recoil is just a little too much if you're trying to tank. They're also backing her up with an Alphonse, which is why I didn't immediately say distant counter. Farsave is a pretty great option for him, and he's probably one of the better users of it right now. They brought along a Peony and a Mila, and a Guinevere. It was also fun to see. They start this off right away, moving Mirth forward into baiting range, with Alphonse protecting her. Unfortunately, Alphonse doesn't protect her from Lunge, and, well, Eliwood Gale forces through and finds a pretty easy knockout in Alphonse. Rhajat actually does a pretty good job here of just whittling Mirth down. Well, the counterattack prevention isn't really necessary here. It's still good to see. And well, when she's that low, Bram is very capable of moving in to finish her off. They do decide to keep going. In between Peony and Guinevere, they can finish off Eliwood easily enough. But at this point, they're pretty cornered, and they don't really have many options available anymore. So, when Bram moves forward, Felix gets to jump in and finish Guinevere off.
Do I look merry?
Dear brother.
And then Edelgard can dance Bram forward and pick up another knockout on Mila.
Ha!
They decide to go for a bit of a stylish surrender at the end here, and have Peony attack Felix. And even though the Bolt Tower dropped him all the way down to 1 hit point, Peony just can't quite finish him off.
Sleep.
This one was a bit of an eye-opener. They brought along a +10 Dimitri. I do think they might have forgotten to switch him to an AR skill set. This feels a lot more like something for the arena. They're also supporting him with a Farsave Henriette, a Dogger, Peony, Air with Tamari, and Mila for the Quad Mythic approach. This was the match where I ended up realizing that Edelgard was using the wrong seal, but thankfully I didn't get punished for it. They set up right away. I'm not sure if they quite realized that Mila would be able to isolate Edelgard going forward, and thought that this would just be the only turn that she could. Unfortunately,
This is your name on it.
Henriette can't handle Felix. Not at this merge level, at least. The Henriette from last week was very intimidating. And once Dimitri gets yanked forward by Eliwood, he can't quite finish Branamond off. And Bram can finish him off. And losing those two is enough for them to just concede the match. It's a little odd to see a win this messy, this late in the season. But This is one of those losses that I think I'm okay with taking. It doesn't lose me much lift. And it gives me a rematch later on. They brought along a max investment Kris. She's really solid with 4 mythics backing her up. As is this max investment Edelgard. They make a really good tank pair. Since Kris can handle any reds that Edelgard might not want to deal with, and Edelgard can handle just about anything else. They take a turn to pick up the pots and move into position. And then end up setting up to start the fight on the second turn, which will let them take advantage of the Bolt Tower when it activates on the third turn, without letting the healing tower get involved. Unfortunately for them, Kris can't quite deal with Eliwood. And Eliwood's quite happy to go into Gale Force through Peony. And with all of her buffs panicked, Rhajat actually finally gets a chance to shine. Kris can't quite finish her off, and once that weapon's been applied, it's very easy for the rest of the team, including Rhajat, to
You're still here?
follow up. And once Kris is that low, Bram can just step in and finish her off.
Prince Marth.
They do decide to keep going here, and it's easy enough to finish Eliwood off. And also for Edelgard to finish off Hell.
I am death itself.
Unfortunately for our team, even though Rhajat does take the first hit, which stops Edelgard from being able to counterattack,
No mercy.
and it's not like Edelgard actually gets to heal either. Eliwood's actually the one to take the next attack, and I think this just comes down to one of the rarely seen rules
I won't lose.
that makes the AI prioritize charging an enemy's special less. But what it ends up meaning is that Felix doesn't get danced, so we don't quite have enough damage to finish Edelgard off here. And, well, with Edelgard still alive,
You can't stop me.
it's easy enough for them to clean things up from here.
Expect the best.
And without any allies to help enable his skills, Felix is a lot less intimidating, so Dogger can tank this hit pretty easily.
Do I look merry?
And then go in and finish him off.
Alright, next.
While it is a little unfortunate to see this, it's not a loss that I'm too concerned about. Getting 2 knockouts is pretty solid already. It is nice to finish the week with a success, though. And we got to see one more Winter Altina for the week. This one's being supported with the Lucina, which is a great way to help enable her Twin Blades on every combat. They also brought a Marianne for backup, along with Dogger, and Peony, and Air. They go straight in for it, and I think not activating her Dio skill was a deliberate choice, since it means that she'll actually get to use Twin Blades on Felix and on Hollywood. Unfortunately,
Let us celebrate.
as I mentioned earlier,
Show your weakness.
Felix is built with Altina in mind, and he can tank that. Hollywood gets danced after that, thanks to Hell's swap. And while he can't quite finish Lucina off, he can still Gale Force through her, and then pick up a knockout on Peony.
Time to sleep.
And then Rhajat actually gets to close the week out by finishing Lucina off.
I'm sorry.
And while the rest of the team can't really get in range, losing those two is enough. Or 3, sorry. Is enough for them to surrender. It was a pretty good week overall. It wasn't completely clean, but I was expecting some adjustments to be made across the week for switching down to one dancer. And honestly, overall, the results were really great. I'm looking forward to seeing how Rhajat does next time, and I'm probably going to end up moving her into the anima season as well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.